Okay, we're at 0. It's starting to count.
I like that though.
Yeah, it is.
Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Guy L. Freer. Now, their show airs nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. Guy L. maintain a focus on sharing books, publishing, marketing, and writing solutions. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more.
And we're back. Welcome to Author's Edge radio show. I'm your host, Guy L. Freer, and each week we bring you thoughtful, lively conversations with writers, publishers, songwriters, illustrators, and artists as we explore the power and craft of storytelling. And today's show is a very special one. It is our final episode of season 8. Yay! I think we're going to leave on a high note. Okay, it's hard to believe how many incredible voices we've shared this season. Stories that have inspired us, challenged us, and reminded us why storytelling matters. I'm so grateful for each one of our guests and to you, our listeners, for being part of this journey. But don't worry, we're not saying goodbye for long. Season 9 begins this September, and we've already have some wonderful conversations lined up for you. We'll be hearing from Michael Shane, author of Boots, Katie Wiley Ray, author of Poplar Bluff Tornado, which is about the tornado that happened, what was that, 1929? 27? Yeah. Cynthia Carroll, author of The Land of Ampersand, and Doug Sykes from Acclaim Publishers. So we've got all of that lined up. Sounds good, doesn't it? You can catch us every Saturday at 8 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. on KWRH FM 929 and KXOK FM 1029, or stream online at KWRH929.com and KXOK1029.com, as well as on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and TuneIn. Author's Edge also airs nationwide Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on the My Genre Radio Network. If you missed an episode, you can always find us on SoundCloud, YouTube, or at authorsedge.org. Now that's authorsedge.org. And speaking of stories that stay with us, today's guest is someone who has dedicated her life to preserving the places and histories that might otherwise fade away. So let me introduce you to Jeanette McDermott. And let's just say her story doesn't stay in one place for very long. I mean, come on. Jeanette McDermott is a photojournalist, author, and documentary storyteller whose work explores the intersection of sacred places, cultural history, and human experience. With a career spanning more than 5 decades and work across 6 continents, she brings a journalist's eye and a pilgrim's perspective to the story she tells. A former U.S. Navy journalist and Army Public Affairs officer, she later worked as a foreign correspondent in Ireland during the Troubles and documented environmental and humanitarian issues throughout Central America. She is the founder of Gubbio Studios. Did I say that right?
You did.
Good.
One of the rare ones that get it right.
Well, you see, I told you I was wonderful. Sacred Travels and Walk the Pilgrim's Path, where she leads a preservation-driven initiative to document sacred sites in St. Louis and across the American Midwest through writing, photography, and film. Her book, her book, Walk the Pilgrim's Path, Discover the Black Madonna Shrine and Hidden Grottos of the Ozark, has been recognized for its contribution to cultural and historical storytelling, and her current work focuses on preserving overlooked spiritual landscapes before they are lost. Jeanette, welcome to Author's Edge, our final show for season 8.
No, thanks. I'm really happy to be here, and especially on Earth Day.
Yes.
It's really cool
Yes,
being here.
today
on Earth Day.
is Earth Day. You've had such an incredible journey, and it's such a pleasure to have you on with us today. So let's start from the beginning and talk about how this all came together. When you look back on everything you've experienced across the world, does it feel like one connected story or a series of moments that slowly come together?
You know, it's fun. It's a great question because in hindsight, it's definitely one connected story. But at the time it unfolds, it doesn't always feel like it's connected. It's like, how in the world did I go from here to here and then from there to there? Because it just seems so absurd sometimes and surreal and magical and whimsical. It's just, life in its natural form of all these different inquisitiveness things going on. But then in hindsight, you say, well, my gosh, I can clearly see how that's connected. And I think that's how I would have to answer that.
What first drew you to documenting sacred places, and how did that evolve into your current body of work?
This might sound macabre to some people, but I've always been fascinated by cemeteries, historic cemeteries.
Oh,
even
I
as
too.
a girl. Well, then you get it.
Yes,
They're sacred sites.
When my husband and I
Yeah.
were first started dating, one of the places we used to love to go on our vacations was the cemetery.
I love it. A soulmate.
Yes,
soulmates. This is awesome.
I love going to cemeteries.
They're phenomenal.
They
Because
are.
the historic ones. Yeah,
Right.
because you've got the incredible reliquaries. You've got the statues, the angels with the magnificent wings, and all over the Victorian graves where they're breaking their hearts. And then you've got the inscriptions that really, the epitaphs
Yes.
that meant something, and
Yes.
you really get to understand their stories.
Yes.
Well, that's how it all began for me.
And how far back they go.
Yes.
That's a study of history.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
a
is.
study
Yeah.
of history.
It is the study
It
of
really
history.
is. And
Mhm.
I've always loved cemeteries. I'm also
so happy to know
fascinated.
that.
I'm also fascinated by the way in which we honor our dead, and we spend so much time with going through the process of honoring our dead, and it's the ceremony of it, and then you start asking existential questions like what happens to us after we die. And one of my favorite plays is Our Town.
I just watched it again for.
I was in the
that.
play.
Get out in high school
No, as an adult.
on Broadway.
No, in our town.
Community theater.
In a
Well,
community
that's even
theater.
better because it's our town and our community and
Yes,
our
Yes.
and
our
I
place.
loved it.
I
love
love
being
it too. I love it
It's
too.
one of my favorite all-time plays.
You know what? Are we sisters? This is
Hell,
amazing. I was just telling a few of my friends the other day, I watched Our Town again for not only the first time since watching the first time when I was a youngster, but I watch it every so often because it stays with me. And they're like, what did you watch? I never heard of it. It's like,
How
you
could
not
you
know
not?
Our Town?
I mean, that one scene where they're all lined up and sitting in the cemetery, and
Yes.
they are talking to each other.
Yes.
That always
Poignant.
It is
Very poignant.
It really
Yes.
Okay, getting back to you.
So that's how
I
it
mean, I could go
happened.
on for days, but getting back to you, so I asked you, what you've worked across 6 continents.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when you realized there is more than a career? This is a calling.
A vocation, absolutely. But you know what? It goes way back to childhood, almost kind of like Our Town, which was more high school. But when I was 8 years old, I knew I was going to be a foreign news correspondent and
Tell
a
us why.
photojournalist. I just knew it. So it was a vocation from the beginning. Well, I grew up in a household where television was new because I was born in 1954. Give it away.
I was born in 1954 too.
Okay, well, there you go.
November 1954.
So, February. We're just months apart.
Mhm.
Well, we're not sisters in that. We could have been cousins, though.
Yeah.
There would have been time for that.
Yeah.
But we digress, ladies.
Yeah.
Keep us on track, Ralph. Keep us on track.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so Dad was very particular about the television because it was new, and we had one little bitty screen. You remember that? The Indian at the end, and it went off at midnight with the Star Spangled Banner, the American patriotism.
Yeah.
So the news was just the thing we all sat around and huddled around pretty much as a family, and Dad made us be very quiet because the news was so critical and important to him. And it was really what made me become what I became in my life, a photojournalist and a storyteller and a traveler, because I would watch that news and be mesmerized as a little girl that, oh my gosh, these stories and these places. And it was also at the time with Walter Cronkite was very revered. He was the most trusted man in America for like 30 years. And
he still is.
He is iconic, isn't he? Just amazing. I loved, and I loved his little Walt Disney mustache too. It was like, so iconic of the era.
Yes.
My dad had one of those too. So just kind of back to that storytelling with the news is what really made me embark on this path. So I knew I grew up in a house full of boys. I have 7 brothers and grew up with 4 of them in the house. The others are older because Dad had a second marriage and a half sister. And there was just a lot going on. And so when it was time for me to really want to pursue journalism as a career by going to college and getting a degree, it just wasn't an option because the boys would come first. And there wasn't money in the first place, because I was raised pretty poor here in St. Louis, and the boys were going to get first choice of anything. So the Navy comes along in 1972 during Vietnam. I'm a graduate now. I joined actually in my junior year, but the motto was join the Navy and see the world. Well, boom. Yes, that checked all the boxes. Travel, see the world, journalism, photography, absolutely. So that's what embarked me into this vocation that I knew early on was going to be my career.
So
That's
when you joined the Navy, they let you be a journalist?
Yes, at that particular time, because it was during the war, and people were fleeing to Canada instead of, and it was during the lottery, so your number would get called.
Yes, I do.
But it was still, so it wasn't really a volunteer army. It was, conscripted service. During the lottery years. But yes, at that particular time, you could go in also with a buddy. So I went in on the buddy plan with one of my BFFs from high school, Chloe McMullen, and she and I joined the Navy together. So that meant we were together at boot camp and that we were together on our first assignment as a duty assignment. So that was great. It was like a big party to be. Yeah. I love boot camp, to be honest. It was just so much fun. And afterwards, we got assigned to the Naval Air Station Miramar in San Diego, California. And this is really where I cut my teeth on journalism. This is really where it all unfolded for me, the reality of journalism. It was, I was stationed there in 1973, and the POWs came home, Operation Homecoming. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When they were released from Hanoi Hilton.
Yes.
And they came to NAS Miramar and were welcomed by their families. They'd been in those prisoner of war camps for years. And I was a journalist in the Navy at that time because I had gotten out of boot camp. That was my first assignment. And it was one of my very first assignments as an actual journalist was documenting and photographing the POWs returning on the tarmac at NAS Miramar. Cut my teeth on it. It made me the journalist I am today. I was 18 years old. Yeah, it made me the journalist I am today. And it got me in touch with those kind of stories that I have done my entire life, and the sacredness and the connections and just everything that happens in life and brings you back to places that you didn't expect. That was just an iconic moment for me that I'll never, ever forget. And the stories, interviewing some of the POWs and hearing their stories of survival and how they made it through and what got them through their resilience, which kind of gets us into the Black Madonna Shrine and the Black Madonna because of her resilience. That's the connection I'm talking about, how
that's spiritual.
Yes. And the connections of that resilience and mystery, and how does everything unfold in life, and how do we fit into it, and how do we impact it, and how does it impact us? Just all of that.
Oh my goodness!
I know. Where do we go with that? Right?
Right. What do I do next? Now where do I go? So your work beyond journalism was something almost spiritual. When did that shift begin to happen for you?
I'll tell you, and that's why I love being here on Earth Day. It happened about 30 years ago with the sisters, a Catholic group of sisters that call themselves Sisters of Earth. And these Catholic nuns were all embedded in the doctrine of the new cosmology with Father Thomas Berry and Brian Swim around eco-spirituality. When Gaia, with Gaia as a living organism in Earth and the embodiment of life itself and how we fit into that 14 billion year history.
Right.
So the Sisters of Earth are really the ones who began to open my mind's eye to this new level of sacredness and this new level of Earth connection and our role in it as human beings. And I went on a retreat with Franciscan nuns. Now, if you know anything about the Franciscans, St. Francis of Assisi and the animals and Earth. So the Franciscans are very devoted to Earth spirituality and eco-spirituality. So I went on a retreat in Clinton, Iowa with them, and it just transformed my life. And so that started me on a new journey of journalism with connections to sacredness and people and stewardship of the land. And then at that time, I was living in Louisville, Kentucky. And at that time, I had 124 acres of land that I had purchased on the South Fork of the Little Barren River. It was beautiful and phenomenal. And where was I going to go with all that? I don't remember.
We were talking about.
Yes. This is really important because along the line, being a land steward, I got connected with other land stewards who really had sacred connections to the land. I mean, really felt the sacredness of the land, not just I own this property and I'm going to do this to it. I'm going to rip this up and put these pesticides on it and, blah, blah, blah. None of that. It was real sacredness. And so that was fully aligned with the Franciscans and the Sisters of Earth. And then I met Father Paschal Phillips at the Abbey of Gethsemane, where Thomas Merton is, so famous for having been and buried there. So Father Paschal Phillips became my mentor. And now I go deeper into eco-spirituality with a monk's perspective of living on the Abbey. And he was the land steward of all that acreage in Kentucky where the Abbey of Gethsemane is. So he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me. And together, he and I and another landowner formed the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association for Land Stewardship. And it's still in existence to this day. Because this dates back now about 25, 30 years. And so then it was just one progression after another, and one mentor and then more sacred connections and more. And before you know it, I'm in a land dump, in a garbage dump, working with kids about photography and filmmaking, about,
in Central
America. All these things are just kind of.
So it's just kind of hopping around.
Hopped around as I felt I really have heard the voice of God a number of times in my life. It's a real audible call. Jeanette, do this. It's almost like you saying, or you, Ralph, saying, Jeanette, hey, let me get your attention. I want you to do this. It's been like that for me with God. I mean, I hear this voice. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to listen to this. And so I heard that voice when I was living on a mountaintop in eastern Kentucky in Appalachia. Talk about storytelling. Oh my gosh, the stories in Appalachia and the storytellers in Appalachia. And just amazing. But that's where I got the call to go to Central America. But that came after the call to travel around the United States with my dog Red for a full year in my car, go into monasteries, abbeys, and convents to capture the stories.
This building was.
I know. As Elizabeth, yes, when it was. Yeah, because I worked for a Catholic Order of Nuns, Sisters of the Good Shepherd, for 12 years. So I know all the nuns in St. Louis. They're awesome people.
Okay.
Plug in for the sisters. So that's how I ended up there. So I hopped around the whole country for a full year telling documentaries about the sisters and the priests and the monks, the brothers, their sacred connections to the land. And I produced 7 documentaries in 1 year, if you can believe that.
Oh, my goodness.
It was crazy. It was just insane. But it was remarkable. And after that, I felt the call to go to Central America. Okay. Yeah. And that's how that all happened. Yeah.
And where in Central America was this?
Well, I went to Costa Rica specifically at Proyecto Campanario, which is a biological field station in the Osa Peninsula near Panama. But every 90 days, I had to leave the country because I was on a travel visa instead of a work visa.
Right.
So every 90 days, I had to leave the country, which is okay. It was an excursion, though, because I was deep in the jungle, way deep in the primary growth rainforest. And it was a 14-hour bus ride, an hour and a half taxi boat, and then a 6-hour hike through the jungle. So getting out to do it every 90 days was a bit of a struggle. But it took me to other places that otherwise I wouldn't have gone and experienced other stories and captured those. And that's how I ended up in Nicaragua at La Chirica, the garbage dump, because I was on one of my expeditions after the 90-day visa thing. And this huge explosion took place in Managua, giant explosion, and then filled the air with massive quantities of thick black smoke. And I asked somebody in Spanish, my broken Spanish, what was that? And they said, oh, that's nothing. That's La Chirica. And I said, what is La Chirica? That's our garbage dump. It was a methane gas blow up.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And they have them all day, every day. So as a journalist, I couldn't let that go. I thought, oh my gosh, what is this all about? So instead of going back to Costa Rica immediately after I had to be gone 72 hours and then every 90 days be gone. Well, I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. I stayed for a couple of months actually in La Chirica in the dump. So I went to the La Chirica garbage dump, which, by the way, nobody would take you in because the portals are called the gates of hell.
Oh, my God.
And nobody that lives in La Chirica could come out without getting stoned and murdered because they didn't want them in public domain because they're filthy. I mean, they stink. They live in a garbage dump. They eat the garbage. They wear the garbage. And their houses are made out of the garbage. They never leave. So the taxi driver drops me off. He says, oh, you're on your own. So I hike in and can't believe what I'm seeing and think, oh my gosh, I've got to capture these stories. And that's what I did. I had cameras with me. So I just put these cameras in the hands of these kids. And I said, tell your stories. You know, what is it like to live inside of a garbage dump and dream of a better future? And I think that's where I got a lot of the parasites that I ended up
I would think so,
returning home from, being very ill. But so it's just been when you ask me about the connections between the sacred and did it always make sense? At the time, it never made sense. It's like, how do you go from this to this to this? But in hindsight, I can clearly see that every bit of it was God driven and God led.
When you first started out, did you imagine your world would eventually take on this deeper, more reflective direction?
No, because I grew up in a house of chaos. Never. All those boys. Whoa, I never dreamed it.
House of Brothers, yes.
I call it the house of noise.
House of noise.
Yes. But in a way, looking back on it, my dad was an agnostic, never went to church, he wasn't an atheist because he was a scholar and he believed it was arrogant to call yourself an atheist when you don't really know, right?
Okay.
So for him, agnosticism was the thing. You just declare, I don't know. But mom was a devout Christian. So I grew up in the Southern Baptist tradition, far cry from today's with the Catholic pilgrimages and shrines and grottos I'm documenting and the Catholic stories I'm telling. But so in that sense, there was a foundation. There was definitely a foundation. Yeah, because mom, we were like their little ducklings. We went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday evening, on Wednesday. I don't know if you know the Baptists, but they're always in church.
Yes.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic.
Marriage. She's Catholic.
Okay, so we only went to church on Sunday. That was it.
Right, or Saturday night.
Or Saturday night, yeah. We once a week was good enough. That was all we did.
And you're Baptist, so you know about that.
I do.
Yes. You're listening to Author's Edge on KXOK 102.9 FM and KWRH 92.9 FM, where every story has a destination. And today we are following the path less traveled, and we're walking with the Pilgrim's Path with Jeanette McDermott, discovering sacred spaces and the stories waiting at every turn. So that really gives us a sense of what you're doing now. And your story actually starts much earlier, though, with your time in the service as a U.S. Navy journalist and an Army Public Affairs officer. So how did that shape the way you tell your stories?
Yeah, a couple of ways. Actually, I started out enlisted as a journalist and then went through officer candidate school to become an officer in the public affairs officer. So those are two entirely different ranks when you're in the military. People that are in the service will understand that. Those that aren't probably won't get it.
He does.
I know from OCS.
Okay, yes. And the enlisted ranks.
Yes.
So when you're an enlisted, it's totally different than when you're an officer. And your behavior is different. Your expectations are different. How you're treated is different. And as a journalist, I couldn't help but observe that as well, because I'm always asking the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and always going deeper in curiosity. It's just kind of my nature. And I began to kind of peel that apart too, even within their own structural ranks of, what that means to be a journalist and what it means to be a public affairs officer and where that link is. So that's just kind of a natural beginning of how everything I look at life is. I see the world in film segments, to be honest, and photo snapshots. Everything I see a picture. Like right now, even looking at you, I'm thinking, oh, this would make a great picture. You got the sea turtles on, you got the glittery, it's like the sparkles on the ocean. That's how I just see the world. And so it's always been like that for me. And even with all the travels, I'll stop in the middle of the road if I see a picture and think, oh my God, I've got to capture this right now. And
Guilty.
Ralph, we are aligned.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
We're inquisitive. We're curious. We are curious.
And when you see it, though, it goes more than curiosity for me, because that's the beginning of it.
Okay.
But then it's like a commitment. It's a dedication. It's such a vocation for me. It's like, if I don't get this picture, I won't be able to live with myself. And for the next 16 years of my life, I will regret not having stopped and taken that photograph, because I've had that happen. And it still haunts me sometimes, the pictures I could have taken if I hadn't had that big semi on my tail just honking at me where I couldn't pull over safely. But yeah, does that even answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, you're doing
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
You are doing great. How has your background in the military and as a foreign correspondent shaped the way in which you approach your work today?
Very boldly. Yeah, in the military, I learned to be very bold in my reporting and in my writing, and it's fast. It's a rapid pace, because I was in during wartime still, Vietnam and the POWs and all that. But then later on, as a public affairs officer, I was during the Gulf War. And by then I was about to be recalled back to active, duty even after retirement, which they will do up until I think it's age 68 or something. So they called me, and I had to go to training, all this for a wartime job that I would be doing. And every time that door would open, another couple of captains would be called. And it's like, oh, please, God, don't let that be my name. I just don't want to do it again. And I wasn't, thank you, God. Thank you for answering my prayers, because I wasn't called up. I finished the duty assignment, so I would have been prepared, but I wasn't called up.
All right, we're going to take a short break in a minute. You're listening to we're going to take a short break. Let's put it that way. And that being that close to moments like that doesn't just stay with you. It changes how you see the world and what begins to feel sacred. Let me see. Where am I? You've got me. Now you've got me.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
I can't stay on
now
track.
You've got me. Let's see, where am I? Where am I?
There was a particular moment, though, in that when I was an officer and I was at a training thing that got back to the whole eco-spirituality thing. That could be kind of a nice, segue, because a couple of the officers blew up trees just for the hell of it. We're not on air, are we?
We are.
We're still on.
Oops.
Well, no, but we're about to take a break. That idea of what's sacred and what might be slipping away really lingers. And we're just beginning to uncover a few of those hidden corners. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll keep walking the path with Jeanette McDermott. This segment of Author's Edge is brought to you by Blue Rooster Publishing, guiding writers from dream to finished book, helping you create stories that enlighten, connect, and endure. Because great stories deserve to be heard. Authors, artists, and creative entrepreneurs want your book or project in front of a literary audience that's already listening. Author's Edge offers promotional opportunities on KXOK 1029 FM and KWRH 929 FM and across the My Genre Radio Network. Whether you're launching a new book or building your platform, we can help you share your story. Ready to reach your audience? Call 573-714-1352. Visit blueroosterorg.com or email gaelfreer@outlook.com. That's Gael, Gaelle, Freer, Freer, @outlook.com. And if you're looking to take that next step in your writing journey, join us September 12th for the Missouri Writers Guild Conference in St. Louis, a dynamic day designed to inspire, connect, and elevate your writing. We're honored to feature Ellen Hopkins, New York Times bestselling author of Crank, as this year's keynote speaker. If you're serious about your writing journey, this is an event you won't want to miss. Visit the Missouri Writers Guild website for full details and come be part of the conversation. Author's Edge, where authors and readers meet and stories find their way into the world. Stay with us, and we'll be right back with more from Jeanette McDermott and her journey along the Pilgrim's Path.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
Jewels on Hampton in St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks, sports memorabilia, and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa. Call them at 314-752-5000. 314-752-5000. Jewels on Hampton.
And we're back. Welcome to Author's Edge. We've been exploring sacred places and the stories behind them with Jeanette McDermott. Now let's step into her book, Walk the Pilgrim's Path and the Ozarks. So let's talk about that.
Yes.
Walk the Pilgrim's Path. What first drew you to the Black Madonna Shrine?
Well, that was serendipitous, or I'll call it another God moment, because
That's this book.
that's the book right there. Yep,
Right here.
that's it. It's a fantastic book because the story is amazing. And as a photojournalist, I'm just always floating around looking for photos to take and stories to capture. And I was just in the Pacific Eureka area one day, and I thought, you know what? I've never been to Pacific. Wonder what that place is all about, and why is it called Pacific? You know, in the middle of nowhere. Why that name? So I was on my way to Pacific to start pursuing some of these answers to these questions that I always have. And I saw this sign, Black Madonna Shrine, on a roadside. I thought, what is that? So that suddenly took my interest. I'm a little bit ADD, so I totally forgot that about the Pacific and went into the Black Madonna Shrine instead. And I go down this road and I'm driving, taking some more turns, end up on this hill. It's like, holy smokes. This was there, those grottos, all these huge masterpieces. And I thought, what is this all about in the middle of nowhere? And that's what began my journey, figuring out what this place was all about and how that led to the book, because I couldn't get answers, you know, and nobody knew the answers to these stories.
So what is it? What is Black Madonna? And why does she hold such a significance across cultures?
I know. So Black Madonna has quite the story, quite the history. In fact, you know, it's a long story. So I do have a QR code. People can download a free excerpt from the book on the history of the Black Madonna.
Ah, we have a QR code.
It's an awesome history. Phenomenal. It dates all the way back to Jesus as an infant and Mary holding the baby Jesus when St. Luke the Evangelist paints their portrait on the tabletop of their kitchen table of the Holy Family. So it goes back 2026 years, the story of the Black Madonna herself. It's phenomenal. So it was a very tumultuous time, you know. Jesus gets crucified. The Romans are who the Romans are, and the emperor and all that. So it becomes a very dangerous time for the Christians in that whole area. And so Mary loved this portrait that Luke painted of her and Jesus. Well, after he's crucified, it's very, very dangerous for Christians to even acknowledge they're Christians, you know.
Right.
And so the painting goes into hiding. And all the Christian artifacts start going to hiding. People are really nervous about this. So, you know, years pass, decades pass, centuries pass, and things get lost. So about 300 years later, in the year 313, Constantine becomes the emperor and makes Christianity legal. He's the first Christian emperor.
Right.
So now it's no longer dangerous to be a Christian.
Mhm.
So people start looking for these artifacts again. They, hey, you know what? All these centuries ago, these stories have passed through the families,
Right.
and there was this, and there was that, and there was this. Well, Constantine's mother is Saint Helena. Saint Helena at the time says to her son, I'm going in search of the true cross, which is the cross where Christ was crucified on. And she said, I'm going to look for it because I think I know where it is. She was a woman, a prophetess. She was a woman of vision, and she had visions and knew where to look for this true cross. So Constantine, her son, says, well, sure, I'll send an expedition out with you, a war party, soldiers take care of you and all this kind of stuff. So mom goes out on this expedition into Rome. And time passes because, they didn't have cars back then. So it took a while. And so she eventually gets there and sees this giant monument of Venus. And she said, that's where the true cross is. Take it down. Demolish that icon, that pagan icon. We're going to find the true cross. So her work party starts digging. They knock it, they demolish it, they destroy it. And sure enough, buried under Venus is the true cross of Christ. And not only that, the Black Madonna, the portrait of the Black Madonna with the baby Jesus that was painted by St. Luke the Evangelist those 313 years earlier. So that's how that starts happening. And so now the story's back, but she's not black yet. That's just the Madonna with the baby Jesus painted on the tabletop. So Constantine is thrilled with what his mother found because she hauls it all back, the cross and everything. And so Constantine puts all of it in his newly built St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But it's not the same basilica today because that one was built 1600s. The initial one was built in the year 3, in the century, the 4th century,
right.
The year 313. And it lasted for 1,000 years before it just fell apart, basically. And they built the new one in the 1600s.
Okay.
But so Constantine puts all these artifacts that Helena found in Rome through excavation, except for the portrait. He loved that portrait, so he put that in the royal compound chapel. Well, time goes by and the chapel catches fire. Everything burns. The whole thing is destroyed except for one thing, the painting. But she had turned completely black. She and Jesus had turned black through the fire, the charring, the smoke, which just became even more mysterious for the people of the day. And they're like, revered her even more then. So now she's on becoming really iconic status. But we have to keep going, because time goes by, pretty fast in our day. So years go by, centuries go by, and now this portrait, this black, because now she's black, there's a Black Madonna, ends up being given away as a diplomacy gift for a wedding dowry back in, and now we're into almost the 1400s. So I won't go into all that other business, but now we're way past Helena bringing it back in 313.
Right.
And so this thing, the icon is given away as a wedding dowry. Well, along the way, it ends up being the prince of the de facto king of Poland, which is now Ukraine. But it happened at this border of what's now Ukraine and Poland, where the de facto king was going to take it home.
Right.
In Poland. Well, he hears a voice from Mary saying, stop right where you are. My painting stays here. In Czestochowa. And that's why she's called Our Lady of Czestochowa, Queen of Poland. So I stay here. Well, he listened. It's kind of like me. You listen to the voice of God. You listen to the voice of Mary. You don't mess around with that stuff. And so he says, okay, we'll do that. Well, there's more to the story. So a real quick story short, it ends up in a monastery at Jasna Gora, Poland, which is where it is today, to this very day. And now we're talking like 1100 then. Well, in 1413, I think it is, these thieves break into the monastery to steal it, to specifically steal this iconic painting of the Black Madonna and Jesus.
Okay.
And they do. So they steal it. They get it out of the monastery because the brothers don't have weapons. So they can't fight this. They get all the way down the monastery, and Jasna Gora is way up on a hill in Poland. And so they get it back down, and the horses refuse to budge. They will not move with this icon, with this painting in the buggy, in the wagon. And so this is a real whoa, what's going on? Well, one of the soldiers gets violent, pulls out his sword and starts beating the horses, and the horses still won't budge. They will not move. So he takes it out on the painting and slashes it. And that's why the Black Madonna has 2 sword marks down her cheek. So he slashes the painting, and that's what's indicative of her. You'll always see her with 2 scars on her cheek from the sword wound in 1413. Well, over the centuries, many artists smoothed out her skin, tried to smooth it out. And every time the scars would come back with blood dripping from them. So after multiple artists just saying, whoa, we're not messing with that one anymore. So they figured, well, Mary just wants those scars to be there as part of the story, as a remembrance of human darkness, basically.
Okay.
And so that's why today she has become a real symbol, not only of mystery, but a symbol of resilience and fiery spirit and overcoming all the odds. And she is considered the national icon of Poland, the Queen of Poland, because she has seen them through so many wars and raids and just terrible things that have happened to them throughout their whole history. And many miracles have been attributed to her, in Poland, among the Polish people. So she's very revered there. And she's still at the Jasna Monastery to this day. She's been there ever
how
since.
does this get to
Pacific, Missouri?
Right.
Yes. So when I I find out all of this through research.
Okay.
Because, I wasn't able to really find much on her at the time. It took me about 5 years to dig into all of it and go deeper with stories and interviews and anecdotes and historical research and digging through archives. Yeah. So she is, okay, really quick. Yeah. Because Brother Bronislaus, he is behind the story of this book. Brother Bronislaus Luz came from Poland as an immigrant monk at the request of Archbishop John Glennon, who was the Archbishop of the time of St. Louis in 1926, 100 years ago. So Brother Bronislaus comes with 4 other monks, friars from Poland at the direct request, because they had a very special charism, a mission that nobody in America was doing at the time. And that was catering to homeless, elderly, indigent men. And after World War I in 1926, still on the heels of World War I, there was a lot of poverty, deep, deep poverty. And the men who were the heads of the household, many didn't come back. Those that did were wounded, mental, shell shock, they called it back in the day. Now it's PTSD. Just all kinds of factions that caused this homeless population of elderly men. And so in rural Pacific, Missouri, which 100 years ago was just nothing but forest, so the Archbishop saw this really serious problem, wanted to do something about it, and met with the Monsignor in Poland, who just happened to be talking about these monks in Krakow who had this as a charism, as a mission. So talk about connections. So these 2 men were having a conversation on a whole different level when the Monsignor says, oh yeah, our monks do this, blah, 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 blah. And the father, the Archbishop says, oh my gosh, we need them. So he invited them to Pacific, Missouri 100 years ago, 1926. And they said yes. So they came and they brought their charism and their mission with them. So they took over a convent that the Sisters of Mercy had and turned it into an infirmary for the indigent, homeless, elderly men living in those rural pockets. Well, so Brother Bronislaus came from a peasant family, and he was a farmer, animal husbandry. He knew everything about the land. See, there's that connection again to the land. So that was his job. He was busy day and night growing food, harvesting food, preparing food for the homeless men in the infirmary, in their care, as well as the brothers themselves in the monastery. Well, every Sunday on his day off, he would take this little walk, this 2.5 mile walk through the forest, and always would end up at the same overlook, this bluff, this overlook, just looking at this vast land of beauty that was so spiritual and sacred. And he heard the voice of God say, build something sacred. And he did. So he spent the next 23 years of his life building the grottos at the Black Madonna Shrine. And there's more to that story, but we're going to run out of time because there's a whole shrine part with more of her in it. There's paintings that are museum quality that come from. It just means
they have to go and visit it.
They have to go. Yes.
That's
you
what
have
I
to
mean.
go
We're
and
not
visit
going
it.
to tell the whole thing because then it would ruin the book.
Thank you.
And we don't want to do that.
What she said. Yes.
Yeah,
right on.
we don't want to ruin the book. Okay, so
Yeah,
you're
that's
gonna have
the
to go
bottom
and
line.
visit,
And it's
and then you're gonna
phenomenal.
also have to buy the book.
Yeah, and the book's in the gift shop.
And the book's in the gift shop.
It is a fascinating story. It's so amazing.
It really is. So,
and it's so worth preserving. So the proceeds I get from the book go to the Black Madonna Shrine. I give the proceeds back to the shrine to help preserve it. And so every book you buy isn't just buying a book. It's also helping to preserve this very sacred site.
So what did you discover while researching and writing the Walk the Pilgrim's Path that surprised you most?
I think what surprised me most was very sad, a deep, sad thing that they're not being preserved. There's no money. That surprised me. I just kind of always assumed these holy places were being preserved, these sacred sites. But it makes perfect sense now because there are so few of them. And that's the reason why there are so few. At one time, they were in great abundance. And that's my second book, doing the hidden grottos and shrines and what that's all about and the origin of these things. But that's why there are so few. And this is one of a kind in America. There is nothing else like this in the United States with the Black Madonna and the grottos. There are other grottos, but nothing with the Black and Our Lady of Czestochowa and the Polish connection, the immigrant connection to Poland. It's so phenomenal. That's what surprised me. And that's what's embarking me on my new journey, is to help preserve these sacred sites.
Okay, when you were writing this book, did you feel more like a guide, historian, or storyteller?
I felt like a pilgrim. I was on the path. I felt honest. I did. I felt like I was part of the story and that I was being led every step along the way. That there were no coincidences. Like that day going to Pacific to understand why it was called Pacific in the middle of Missouri, and then seeing that sign and following that and just going and having my eyes open and not finding the story. So I had to write the book to get the story and all of it. Yeah, that was, yeah.
What do you hope readers feel as they journey through these places with you?
I hope they feel the same love that I feel for them, and the devotion and the wonderment, the awe and wonderment of the power of one individual to have created such a legacy, so much beauty, so much sacredness. Just one person, and they're all like that. Every grotto and shrine I have visited, there's a story of one, there's a power of one person that was behind it all. And I love that. To me, that's very sacred in and of itself. To hear the voice of God, to hear the voice of Mary, and you go with it, and then you leave a legacy behind for generations to come. It's pretty magical. Yeah.
You also gave me a quote from the book. In your book, there's a line that really, for you, captures the heart of what you do. And I'd like to share that. You said, sacred places don't disappear overnight. They fade through neglect until they are forgotten. But when someone stops, sees, and tells the story, that act can awaken others and remind us that some places are worth saving for generations to come. The idea of places fading through neglect really lingers. Why do you think we stop seeing what's right in front of us?
In today's age, we've just gotten, where's a cell phone? We've gotten too much like this. We don't even look up to see anything anymore if it's not right here. That's part of it. And too much noise. There's noise everywhere, and distractions and social media, and just constantly keeping us connected to technology instead of breathing and watching,
becoming disconnected
and being disconnected and totally connected with Earth. And that's my take on it.
When you say storytelling can awaken others, have you seen that happen in real time?
I have. I see it all the time.
Tell us.
Like when you share a story, like I just came back from a 3-week trip to Wisconsin looking for the hidden shrines and grottos of the Midwest corridor for my second book. And for example, I was talking to somebody about this priest who created something not at all like this, but similar in the sense that it's a grotto, you know, with stones and statuary and all this. And I was talking about that with this person that I met on the trip, you know, just at a like cafe. And they said, well, I'm going to go see that. And they did that very day. And then I got a text message saying, oh my gosh, I've been transformed by that. I think my life's been changed. What can I do to help save it? What can I do? How can I be part of the story? And that's just one example of so many that I've had my whole life. It's just awesome.
There's something powerful in the idea that attention itself can preserve a space. Do you see storytelling as a form of quiet activism?
Not quiet activism, definitely activism, but not quiet. It's loud and it forms movements. It's rapid energy, and it gets people engaged and involved and forever transformed. I think that's the power of story.
That idea for generations to come carries weight. Do you feel a sense of responsibility in your work?
I do. I never thought of it like that. That just boom, that hit right there. That landed. It did. I do feel a sense of responsibility. Wow. I keep getting invited to these social events and I keep saying, no, I got to work on my book. I'm 72. I don't know how much more time I have. And I don't know how much more energy I've got. I hope forever. But it's like, no, I got to work on my book. It's like, Jeanette, you've been working on it. You just finished a book. Take a break. It's like, no, I got to keep.
I have more to say.
I have more to say and more to tell and other stories to capture. I have other voices to capture and document on film.
I have more to do. I have more to see. I have more to give.
Exactly. So I do feel that responsibility. Yeah.
You're listening to Author's Edge on KXOK 1029 FM and KWRH 929 FM, where stories lead the way and we don't mind getting a little off the beaten path. Today, we're stepping back into Walk the Pilgrim's Path with Jeanette McDermott, uncovering sacred places, hidden history, and stories that have been waiting very patiently to be found. And finding a found mission. That idea really stays with you, and it's something you've actually brought to life through the work you're doing to preserve these places. You found multiple initiatives. What inspired you to create platforms for this work?
Oh, because I want others to have a firsthand experience and fall in love with it so they feel a sense of responsibility as well. And then through that, I really believe that if we don't know something's there, we can't protect it. And even if we know it's there, if we don't have a personal experience with it, we can't fall in love with it. And it's through those pilgrimages that we have firsthand experience, and then people might fall in love with it and want to do the next thing and help preserve it and be on this journey with me through sacred preservation.
What is the Sacred Preservation Initiative, and how does it expand beyond your book?
Yeah, the book is very localized right here in Missouri and actually the whole U.S. And then that led to the pilgrimages because people were saying,
I think, Ralph, I think you and I have been here.
Oh my gosh, you have to go back if you don't know for sure.
Oh, we've been to one like that. I don't know if the same one. That was the one up around Appleton over.
In Wisconsin? Appleton, Wisconsin?
No. North of Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
No, this one is specific.
It looks like that, but I don't think it's that one.
Oh, I have to know about that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, because the grottos are all similar in the sense that they're made with rock stones and usually native, right there locally because they're very localized. The immigrant communities created these in the 1800s when they came over.
North of Cape, Perryville area.
Oh, Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. Yes, Perryville.
Yeah, maybe
with the pathway into the grottos.
Right, and there's water comes out of the cave.
A very amazing one. That's Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal.
Okay, that's okay. We've been there.
Perryville.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
that's what it kind of reminded me of. That.
Yes, it would. It would. Yeah. And so the interesting thing, how this led to the pilgrimages, is pretty fascinating because when I first launched the book, when it first came out in November, like all of us, our friends and family support us, our neighbors, our little circle of networkers, and they were all buying the book without even knowing what it was about. They just bought it to support me. And then they were reading my book and looking at my photographs and saying, Jeanette, I want to see this place. So after the 55th person saying to me, Jeanette, you got to take me here. I'm thinking, that's an hour from where I live. I can't keep doing this every day. So I was talking to my buddy, John Walsh, about this one day. And I said, what do I do about this? I don't want to say no. It's that sense of responsibility. And he says, well, no problem. Let's go on a pilgrimage. So on Epiphany, January 4th, right after Christmas, on a cold winter's day, 31 pilgrims show up, 32 counting me. At the Black Madonna Shrine, we all meet up there and we go on this most amazing pilgrimage with prayer and storytelling around with the executive director, Mike Scully, led the storytelling pilgrimages around each of the grottos. And then we did the Franciscan Crown Rosary, which is hardly ever said, but on Epiphany it is. And so my buddy Bob Koff led that, who's helping me promote the pilgrimages. And so after that pilgrimage, which lasted like 3 hours, it was awesome. People were saying, okay, Jeanette, where are you going to take us next? I said, what? I just wrote the book. And they're like, no, where is she going to take us? We have to see more. That's what started the pilgrimages. So I said, well, okay, let's see if we can make this happen. So Bob and I, then we talked about it. And I said, now how do we, kind of like with me with John, how do I make all this happen with 55 people? Let's go on a pilgrimage. So I say to Bob, how do we make this happen with all these pilgrimages? He says, well, you know what? Let's start with the Archdiocese. This is the Jubilee, the bicentennial Jubilee year, and they have designated 15 official sites as pilgrimages. We can start there. So it was easy. So we did. So we looked at the 15 sites and said, nah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Nah. Oh, yeah, that would be a cool one. So we then just kind of curated. Is that the trendy word these days? We curated these pilgrimages. So 5 are official through, if you can get indulgences and everything with the Archdiocese pilgrimage sites. And then the others are ones that we thought would be really cool, which include the Greek Orthodox Church, the Ukrainian Church. We went to St. Cecilia with Spanish. We did Stations of the Cross in Spanish. We did the Polish Church Sunday, St. Agatha, and that Mass was in Polish. And we're doing, this is really a cool one, in November, as part of Native American Heritage Month, we're going to Cahokia Mounds for the Native American sacred grounds.
That is so cool.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, I love it.
That is so cool.
So each one of them are characterized completely unique and different than the one before. They're all characterized by their location. And some are thematic, like the one in November at Cahokia Mounds. Yeah, so that's how we did it. So it got started. So then the pilgrimages have become so popular and successful and fun because it's community building with these like-minded, soulful people. So it's just so cool. And each one's so unique. So then it was like people started saying, well, Jeanette, where are you going to take us outside of St. Louis? This is all St. Louis. I think, oh my God, is this ever going to stop? So I went into discernment about that. And really got clear that, okay, God, this is a cool thing. I'm happy with this. And so now I'm doing the Midwest. And then I created a company called Sacred Travels. So now I'm working with a travel agent in Michigan, and she and I have formed this business that we're going to be doing sacred travels throughout the Midwest. So I'm now back to my military days of being a scout. You go out and you scout these places first before you tackle the mission. That's what I'm doing now. So I spent 3 weeks in Wisconsin just kind of scouting things around.
I remember I was emailing you and you were having trouble getting internet.
Because it's all the hinterland. So next I'm doing Iowa and then Missouri, the hinterlands, because these things are hidden. You have to find them. It's like being a detective. I've always loved Sherlock Holmes. My favorite. I love Sherlock. I feel like, hey, I've entered the Sherlock world of Sherlock Holmes too. And Hercule Poirot, my favorite mystery guy. Yeah, I love that guy. So I'm thinking about embodying Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot these days, trying to find these hidden grottos. That's a cool word. Yeah. Grottos and shrines. And so, yeah, that's what the Sacred Initiative is then. It's part of this whole sacred travels thing in the Midwest to get people to love these pilgrimage sites and preserve them, because they're so hidden that they are falling apart. And, they're exposed to the elements 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, snow, sleet, ice, hail, tornadoes, earthquake, everything. So they do need to be preserved. And it takes money. It takes money to preserve them.
Okay. We are getting to the end of our show, believe it or not.
Darn.
And so how can people get a hold of you?
Great. I have 2 websites. One is walkthepilgrimspath.com. And that's where you can download the free excerpt of the history of the Black Madonna, which is so cool. You have to know her history because it's just so powerful. And sacredtravels.com has a hyphen in between. Sacred-travels.com is where you register for pilgrimages. You learn more about what I'm doing and all this kind of stuff. That's everything we've been talking about. So those are the 2 current websites. And then, just reach out through email.
And they can get the book on.
They can get the book at both places.
Can they get it on Amazon?
No, because Amazon takes like 70%, and I want the proceeds to go to the shrine instead of Jeff Bezos. Okay. So that was an informed decision. Same with Kindle. It's ruthless. Yeah. And so you can get the book through me, which I love, because then I can give the money to the shrine.
Right. So, and how to get to you?
It's walkthepilgrimspath.com, all rolled together.
Okay.
And sacred-travels.com. And you can get the book at either one.
Okay. Jeanette, thank you so much for joining us today. Your work reminds us that some of the most meaningful journeys, aren't always the ones we plan, but the ones we're willing to notice, explore, and preserve. Your book, Walk the Pilgrim's Path, is a beautiful invitation to do just that, and a fitting way to help us close out Season 8 of Author's Edge on such a thoughtful and inspiring note.
Thank
You like that?
Completely.
All right.
Aw,
And to
thanks.
our listeners, thank you for being part of our literary community, for supporting the stories that challenge us, inspire us, and carry us somewhere new. It's been an incredible season, and I'm so grateful to everyone, especially Mark, who helps me and keeps me from thumping and keeps me from doing all that I shouldn't be doing. It's been an incredible season. I'm grateful to everyone. We'll be back in September with season 9, bringing you more conversations, more stories, more voices that matter, and we can't wait to share them with you. Thanks for listening to Author's Edge on KXOK 1029 FM and KWRH 929 FM. You can catch us on air each weekend, stream at kxok.com, kwrh.com, on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and TuneIn, and nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. Missed an episode? Find us anytime at authorsedge.org. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, keep creating, and I'll see you around the inkwell. Bada boom, bada bang.